Hello, everybody. Welcome to week 2 of Northwestern's virtual learning environment. I trust you had a wonderful week. Congratulations for getting through this first week. I tell you what, these are unique and interesting times that's going on in our world and certainly in our community. And I trust and pray that your families and you are safe and doing okay and healthy. So with that, let's jump right into our lesson today, which as you look at the syllabus, it's Christians' view of work, or sometimes I like to say how we as Christians, how we can be leaders in our workplace, regardless of whether we supervise anybody or if we're just a person at work doing a job, and how we can influence the workplace. When you think of work, what does that conjure up in your mind? You know, for some of us, I think we got to hear that alarm clock and it's drudgery. Maybe there's a boss or a coworker that we don't really get along with very well. Maybe it's somebody that's just kind of annoying. Or for others, maybe we really love the work that we do. But what I want to do today is just really give you a view, a perspective. As believers, as Christians, we're gonna turn to the Bible, and what does the Bible say about work? So I'm going to walk through a few things, share a few scriptures with you in this lesson, and give you a perspective and a context to hopefully, encourage you as you look at how we view work, and eventually as you graduate and you pursue a career, whether it's regardless of what business world you're going to pursue. Maybe it's taxes or accounting or finances or whatever that might be. It's really important at the outset of your career to have the proper perspective. So with that, let's jump in. What does the Bible say about work? I'm going to start with an essay. It was written by Bob Black back in 1985. So listen to see what Bob has to say. And I quote, "The abolition of work," that's what his title is. "No one should ever work. Work is a source of nearly all the misery in the world. Almost any evil you'd care to name comes from working or from living in a world designed for work. In order to stop suffering, we have to stop working." I just think about that quote. Kind of interesting. Sometimes I think in our world we want to have an easy life. We want to have a leisurely life. The truth is we as Americans, we spend approximately 50% of our waking hours devoted to work. So what do you think? Is work a curse, or is it something that humans were uniquely designed and created for? In stark contrast to the assertions from Bob Black, the significance and beneficial nature of work is a resounding theme in the Bible. So let's open up the scriptures here a little bit and share with you. Now, I'm not a theologian, all right? I'm not in the biblical theological study, so I'm just going to share you some perspectives that I have and share some verses with you. Let's start in Genesis 1:1. So we're going to be here for a few hours as we go through Genesis. I'm just kidding. In the opening passage, God is the primary worker. We know that. He was busy creating the world. He worked for 6 days, right? And what did he do on the seventh day? He rested. That should be a principle that we start thinking about right now as we pursue our careers, that it's important to rest. We do not need to be workaholics. Balance is important. So he worked 6 days. He rested on the seventh day. God was first to do work here on earth. The legitimate work that he did reflects the activity of God. Because God is inherently good, work also is inherently good. In Ephesians 4:28, it's a really good passage that I want to share with you that Paul wrote. He said, "He who has been stealing must steal no longer, but he must work, doing something useful with his own hands, that he may have something to share with those in need." Now, when you think about work, it's important. We get work to earn a paycheck. We're going to have bills. When you graduate, you're going to have to repay student loans. You're going to have to pay rent or pay for your mortgage, put food on the table. So we do work to earn a paycheck. Interestingly, Paul discusses that, we also we work to gain money or resources so that we can give back to other people. So that's important to keep in context as well. When God viewed the fruit of his labor, what did he call it? If you remember, he called it very good. He looked back at all that he created. In that is examination. He assessed the work that we do. It's really important that we look at the outcomes of our work, even the outcomes as students, as you're grinding through classes and writing papers and doing presentations. I think there's times where we look back and say, you know what? I nailed that. And that was really good. And it's probably because of the works, blood, sweat, and tears that you put into that presentation or you put into that paper. When you get that good grade back, that outcome is really important. Our work should be productive. And we as Christians, we should have the pursuit that we want the highest quality outcome in the work that we do. The reward for work is the honor and satisfaction that comes from a job well done. When I was in charge of soldiers, and that's one of the things that I always really counseled and mentored them on is you want to come to work and you want to work hard. And you really want to look back on their day's work and say, you know what, I put in a quality day's work. All right. It had an impact on people, had an impact on the process and the requirements that I had. And I did an excellent job with what I did. And that's kind of the theme of what we're leaning towards. In Psalm 19, I just want to share a verse in there. It reveals a little bit about God and himself to the world of his work. So verse 1 says, the heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Day after day, they pour forth speech. Night after night, they display knowledge. I should have stopped at verse 1. But anyway, the skies proclaim the work of his hands. I just love that verse. Again, the psalmist is reflecting on the work that God did in the skies. The work reveals something about the one doing the work, okay? That's us. Regardless of what type of job you have, whether you're working at McDonald's, whether you're working at a Home Depot, and eventually you're working in a business career, it reveals something about who you are. It exposes your underlying character, your motives, your skills, your abilities, and your personality traits. Jesus in Matthew chapter 7, he declared that bad trees produce bad fruit and good trees produce good fruit. So I think there's this indication of who we are as a person, and our character will be reflected in the work that we do. I love this verse in 1 Corinthians 10:31. It says, whatever we do, we should do to his glory, to God's glory. The term glorify means to give an accurate representation. Therefore, work done by Christians should give the world an accurate picture of God and his righteousness. The work that we do represents God. We represent God in the workplace. It's just really important. As you know, after God created the heavens and the earth and seas and land and trees, he created man in his own image with characteristics like him. Of course, he created Adam and Eve. He put them in the garden to cultivate it and to maintain it, to subdue and rule over the earth. Now, eventually, their work got difficult. We know that. Sometimes work has its challenges. Because of sin, we have challenges even in our workplace today. But work itself is still good, and man must not expect it without the sweat of his brow. Even Adam and Eve experienced thorns and thistles, and there's going to be whatever analogy that you want to put, there's going to be thorns and thistles in your life and the work that you do. And sometimes, I want you to think about this quote. Let me throw this sentence at you for you to ponder. Hard work and effort will not always be rewarded in the way the laborer expects or desires. So what does that mean? It means sometimes our work, even though we did it with excellence, may not be rewarded in the way we want it to. Sometimes bosses just don't see the work we do. They don't see our passion. And Jess and I are going to discuss it numerous times throughout our lessons that we're presenting to you. The job choice is really important. The environment, to fit the culture as you pursue careers in business. You've got to choose ones that fit you, fit your values, where you can continue to be a Christian. I know that my time in the Army, 20 plus years, interestingly, the Army is a culture in which they believe in what they call spiritual fitness and a foundation. It's certainly a very secular environment. There's chaplains in every unit that help guide and direct and encourage soldiers throughout their time. But generally we have to look at the environment that we're in, and does it fit and meet the culture and the values that we want to represent. But sometimes life is hard. Work is hard. And sometimes it doesn't meet our expectations, but that doesn't mean we stay in that job. Certainly if we're in a toxic environment, or if we're in an environment where boss or a supervisor is abusive, then it's time to look at something else that fits our qualities. So let's see here. Jesus said in John 4:34, my food is to do the will of him who sent me and to finish his work. So again, even as Jesus came into the scene on earth, he was focused on the work that God put him here. And I wrote this down in my notes. It says work is of no value except when God is in it. And I just really feel that so strongly that, kind of back to that verse in Corinthians where the work and things that we do, we ought to glorify God and have him part of that. There's kind of a negative or a warning aspect in scripture to laziness, meaning if we're not working, I think we should be concerned about that. In Proverbs 18:9, it addresses laziness and careless in work and refers to it as a brother to him who destroys. I'm going to use Dave Ramsey. Those of you that know him as a financial entrepreneur at Ramsey Solutions, I love his work. I love his perspective. And he a lot of times quotes this verse out of 1 Timothy 5:8. It says, anyone who does not provide for their relatives and their family, especially for their own household, has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. Work gives us purpose. It provides us money and resources, and it's something that I think we need to, again, keep that in perspective. A couple more things to kind of close this section out here as I wrap up. Some other critical biblical principles regarding work are work is done not only to the benefit of the worker, but also others. It's not just about ourselves, but we have a mission, we have goals and outcomes that we want to accomplish in our workplace, and it's about helping others as well. Again, work is a gift from God for his people and to be blessed, and God equips his people for their work. Again, another one of my favorite verses. I guess I can't keep saying favorite verses, but another verse that really speaks to me is out of 1 Thessalonians 5:24, that the one who calls you, the one being God who calls us, is faithful, and he will do it. Now, that doesn't mean he's going to go to work for us, but he will equip us and he will prepare us for the work that we have to do here on earth. So as I wrap up these things, I just want to wrap up this lesson with you all. I just want to share a couple final parting comments here. You may have heard this statement that we are earthly, or we're spiritual beings having an earthly experience, and I think that ties into the journey that we're on here on earth, even the challenge that we're facing amidst this virus pandemic here on earth, just things that we don't control, but we're grounded in our faith. We ensure that we establish a routine that's important to what we're doing in life. It's prayer, it's devotions, it's church attendance, even through online now during this time. And just being intentional and look at the effectiveness of what we do at work and at school, and just who God has placed in our lives to be an influence. I think everybody has a past, and even as you looked at the Simon Sinek video from last week, you kind of look at how we've been shaped, how we've been raised with our parents, and really our background and our story shape who we are, the influence, the decisions that we make, the values that we've established, and the foundation of who we are. And that goes into our perspective and our view of work that's so important, that we're grounded in our faith and in what we do. So a few years ago, when we moved from Georgia to Minnesota, I took over a supervisor job in recruiting. I was in charge of the 4 state regions here, both the Dakotas and Minnesota and Iowa, and just a very busy and demanding job. But one of the things that really helped ground me in that moving around in the Army was just this perspective of where God has placed me in my work, what is the sphere of influence? What are the people that are in my circle, and how am I going to impact them? When we moved, my oldest son, Daniel, who I shared with you, is a senior, graduating in December in a business marketing major. He got his first big boy job back in 2015 when we moved here at Quick Trip gas station. And I just shared with him 3 points that really aren't spiritual, but I think it also represents some of the things that we talked about. And the first thing, these three things are: work hard, have a great attitude, and be a team player. And I think if we as Christians, we take that perspective and those principles, we're gonna have an influence, and we're gonna make a difference in the work that we do, whether we're in a secular environment or whether we're working in a church or a nonprofit or a Christian environment. It's important that we as believers, we work hard, we have a great attitude, and we have a team player. And I think in following lessons, I'm going to develop this a little bit more. But I think that's important in whatever we're doing. So as I wrap up, I think I've said that 3 times, but I promise we're almost done here. I want to share, this movie came out a long time ago, called Chariots of Fire. It's based upon Eric Liddell, who's a Scottish athlete who inspired this Oscar-winning movie. There's a quote. He was an Olympic gold medalist in the 1924 Paris Olympics. He has this famous quote that says, "God made me fast, and when I run, I feel his pleasure." And I think there's times when the work and the occupation we pursue, we want to run this race in life and feel God's pleasure. Eric came under a lot of scrutiny, and because of his religious beliefs and his faith, he was destined to win the 100 meters in the 1924 Olympics, but he refused to run that because the heats for those races were on Sunday, and he wasn't going to do that. Later in the Olympics games, he actually volunteered to run the 400 meters, which is actually what he won the gold medal in. Following the Olympics, he returned to his country of birth in China and was an evangelist and promoted Christianity through there. But he's just a great example of the things that he did in his own personal life. And so lastly, I'm going to leave a final quote from Eric Liddell. And he says, "As Christians, I challenge you, have a great aim, have a high standard, make Jesus your ideal, and make him an ideal not merely to be admired, but also to be followed." All right. I hope you all have a great week. I hope you enjoyed a perspective, not only from Scripture, but also how we can practically be an effective Christian here, no matter what work we do. So have a great week, and we'll see you next time. God bless.